I'm Father Basil Pennington. I'm a Cistercian monk, more popularly called Trappists. I belong to a monastic community in Massachusetts, St. Joseph's Abbey, although for the last 3 years I've been living out near Hong Kong on the island of Lantau in a Chinese community of Trappists. Centering prayer is a new name and inspired greatly by one of the great spiritual masters of our century in the United States, Thomas Merton, whose spiritual writings have been translated into at least 30 languages, and so he's a spiritual master throughout the world in that sense. And this kind of prayer was traditionally called prayer of the heart, or prayer in the heart. Heart being used there in the biblical sense of meaning that ground of your life, the place where God is constantly bringing you forth in His creative love, the center and core of our being. But we found that when you say heart to Americans, they think of this cardiac organ and their pacemakers and all those sort of things. And so Merton would speak of the center. But center really is taken in two senses here. It's that deepest place within us, the source and ground of being, but it's also of how we center our whole selves in that, and that brings everything in our life into harmony and vitalizes everything in our life, becomes the real center of energy and life for us. And it gives a direction to everything we do and an empowerment. And so it's popularly called centering prayer, and it's just a very, very simple way of people letting go of everything and just opening to the experience of the divine and the ground and center of their being. And being constantly vitalized that way so that they can bring this to others. And it is such a simple thing that once people make the breakthrough and sort of experience it, they can very easily bring it to others. They're going to be people who are going to feel called to make this their full-time ministry and to step forward and bring this to all segments of the world and to bring it to other language groups and to really network the whole world with this vitality of experience of the divine and living out of this vital living experience. I was teaching the centering prayer, the prayer of the heart, out of the Christian tradition. I knew it was rooted in the Jewish tradition, but it was, a Christian tradition, but then finding that this was a kind of prayer that people from all different traditions could find their home in. This realization that at the ground and the source of our being is the divine, the transcendent. We used all different names, but it didn't matter. We knew that this was where we really met. And so when we sit there in the silence and drop all our parameters, we also drop all our theology. Not that we give up our theology, but we go through our theology to the reality beyond, and there we find a unity and a peace and an ability to be together and to sense our oneness and to come out with a commitment to work together, to be together, and to create together a world that is what it should be. I had the tremendous privilege of being, in some small way, a participant in the Second Vatican Council, which was a moment of tremendous grace, I think, not only for the Roman Catholic Church, but for the entire human community. The Spirit of God was very powerfully there, and we had a gathering of over 3,000 bishops, literally from every corner of creation. And so it was an exceptional coming together of human family, human culture. And the heart and center of this, of course, was initially Pope John the 23rd, but more vitally and more powerfully, Pope Paul VI, who in many ways inspired John the 23rd, and then followed him and carried it forward. And it was Pope Paul VI who called us forth, really, and made it very clear that, the renewal which the Church was about would not fully be realized unless we reanimated this contemplative dimension of life. That life again was sourced at the very source. And as you know, the Second Vatican Council called upon Catholics to honor and respect, reverence everything that's good in every religion of the world. And even for people who had no religion, atheists and so on. And not only to honor and respect that, but to foster that. So it was a whole new kind of climate. And it saw the church not as a clearly defined body, but rather as a people, where some people were more involved than others, had more of a sense of belonging, were more dedicated to this particular vision, but that there were a whole varying degrees. And it reached out and said, potentially everybody in the world is a part of the people of God. And that all are called to join into this human, and are parts of the human family, and are called to join into the transcendence of the human family, into the community union with the divine. What happens? You know, I've been living centering prayer for 50 years or more. I have been sharing it, you know, for 25 years very energetically and fully now. And I am still a bit in awe that such a simple thing as sitting there for 20 minutes twice a day, open to the divine, can have such a transforming effect on your life. It amazes me. I know it in my own life, the joy, the peace, the excitement, the wonder, the reverence for life, the potential of life, everything. It's so wonderful, you know. And I wish everybody would have this, and that's part of my excitement in sharing centering prayer. It does it. It doesn't. How does it do it? Well, it acts in many ways. One thing, you know, it makes us, one of the nice things it does, you begin to realize, you know, God can take care of the world for 20 minutes without you, and, you know, He can manage. And so you don't have to carry everything on your shoulders all the time. That's a great breakthrough for some people, you know. But then, you know, there's this new vitalization within you, you know, a sense of how much you're loved and how precious a person you are, and that you can really make a difference. You yourself, not what you do, not what you have, not what other people think of you, but you. You are a presence. You know, the Hebrew Bible tells us that God defines Himself as I am. And we are made in the image of God. And so we are. I am, huh? And I am one who can do all sorts of things. See, and one of the philosophies our time says, you know, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. You know, I got to have good thoughts and everything to be somebody. You know? And in centering prayer, we learn even to let our thoughts go, and we discover, I simply am. And I'm a wonderful gift. And I can bring life and love and vitality to people. Okay? A tremendous freeing and empowerment, the fullness, the source of being life in us is able finally to be there as gift and life and hope to everybody. Okay? This takes so much tension away from life so that we're able to really, you know, be fully there and you know, so many times you sit down with somebody and you get the impression that, you know, you really have to fight to get his attention. He's obviously thinking about the next things he's got to do, the things he did before, and so on. And you keep repeating yourself and trying to get his attention and so on. And what a difference is when you sit down with somebody and they're all there for you. And you know immediately they are really hearing you. And this is one of the fruits that comes out of centering prayer. You learn how to let everything else go and just be there. And be wide open to the wonder, the message, the beauty that's coming. And you reflect back to people then in a very pure way their own beauty, their own wonder. You know, and get them in touch with how much God really loves them. Yeah. So it's a very, very powerful thing in our lives. It really transforms us. Whenever I teach, you know, I'm a Roman Catholic. I'm deeply formed by this 2,000-year-old Christian tradition. And if I'm going to really share the deep reality within me, it's going to come out that way. See? And that's the best, that's where true dialogue takes place. You know, when I traveled in India and in the East there, I had many of the great masters like Kalu Rinpoche and so on tell me that they never met anyone who understood them so well as Thomas Merton. Now, Merton wasn't a great scholar. And the scholars would say he really didn't know that much about Hinduism, Buddhism, and so on. But the fact was that he was a man of profound depth in his own tradition And speaking out of the depths of his own tradition, he was able to meet them in the depths of their traditions. The heart of Christian teaching is the Trinity, that God is one and three. The human mind can't put that together. We believe it and accept it, that God is absolutely one, and yet God is three persons who totally give themselves to each other in complete love and fulfillment. See? And our Christian teaching, or Catholic teaching, is that we have been created by God in the image and likeness of God and called forth to enter into that triune life, to have a oneness in Christ, with the Father and the Spirit, like as Christ himself has. And so there's a oneness with God that's beyond any unity, oneness we can conceive here. And at the same time, preserving the separateness of the persons so there can be a fullness, a complete fullness of the human reality of communion in love. See? And so it has the fullness of both. It's all one, and it's still able to be distinct persons really loving and entering into the communion of love. See? And, how this all works out, we don't say we know how. We don't, obviously. We begin to experience this already in the centering. We don't lose who we are, and yet we know we're deeply one with God, constantly coming forth from his creative love. He is the source of all goodness, life, truth, and beauty. And we come forth from that constantly. And at any moment he wasn't bringing us forth as creative love, we would cease to exist. And so there is a oneness that, in a sense, is beyond what any pantheist ever talked about. And yet there remains that wonderful possibility of I and you as distinct persons really communing in love. We don't just disappear into each other, but there's a communion of love. And so that's the fullness and the richness of the Catholic theology, that you have that oneness, but you also have the interpersonal communion.